What is going on, YouTube? It's your boy T-REV 757. It's been a crazy trial going on in Delphi with Richard Allen. Now, I do want to bring you guys some updates and what has been going on with the trial. So if you were locked in for that, you know that I followed this case from day one, and Libby and Abby need justice. So I do want to dive into that now. Today, we're diving deep into the Richard Allen Delphi trial. And let me tell you, some shocking twists have left everyone from legal experts to the general public speechless. For those following this heartbreaking case, the courtroom has become a roller coaster of emotions, strategic maneuvers, and powerful evidence revelations from both the prosecution and the defense. What exactly is happening behind those courtroom doors? What's the impact of these new revelations on Richard Allen's fate? And how did these dramatic turns change what we thought we knew about this case? Stick around, because we're unpacking every critical development up to today. If you're joining us for the first time, here's a quick overview. Richard Allen, arrested in connection with the infamous Delphi murders, has been at the center of a lengthy investigation and an intense trial that has shaken the small community of Delphi and captivated people across the country. Charged with the murder of the two young girls, Abby and Libby, Allen's trial has not only highlighted the depths of an ongoing mystery, but exposed new and complex layers to a case that was already rife with questions, suspicion, and intrigue. In today's video, I'll walk you through the most crucial courtroom moments from the trial so far, including emotional testimonies and the tactical moves made by both the defense and the prosecution. For those who have been following from the start or are just catching up, this recap is packed with every key detail and revelation that's shaping the direction of the case. To answer the biggest questions, where does the case against Richard Allen stand, and what could be next in this high-stakes legal battle? But before we dive in, a quick reminder: if you're interested in staying up to date with this case and other true crime stories, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss out on the latest updates. With that, let's dive into what's been happening inside the courtroom and why so many are calling this trial one of the most dramatic, intense, in recent history. Now, I want to give you the background of the case. The story begins in Delphi, Indiana, a small, close-knit town that was forever changed in February of 2017. Abby Williams and Libby German, two best friends, went for a hike on the Long High Bridge Trail on a chilly afternoon. Excited to enjoy the outdoors, however, the unthinkable happened. The girls disappeared, and despite the community's frantic search efforts, they were nowhere to be found. Tragically, their bodies were discovered the next day, and the entire town found itself gripped by fear and grief as the reality of the double murder set in. This was not an extraordinary case. Abby and Libby were loved, bright, and cherished members of their community, and the mysterious circumstances of their deaths capture a short video clip on her phone showing a man approaching them on the bridge. An audio recording from that clip revealed a man's voice saying, "Down the hill." This eerie evidence became a focal point for investigators and the public alike, a haunting message from the victims themselves. Despite intense media coverage, community efforts, and a flood of tips, the identity of the man on the bridge remained unknown. Years passed, and Delphi, a town accustomed or unaccustomed to violent crime, was left in an agonizing limbo. Friends, families, and residents waited for answers that seemed like they would never come, while investigators faced the daunting task of piecing together any new information in a case that had remained cold. Authorities received and followed up on thousands of tips, released composite sketches, and conducted interviews, but nothing seemed to break this case. Hope began to fade for some, and rumors of the case going cold started circulating. In a shocking twist, the breakthrough came in October of 2022, where we were live on stream and covered the capture of Richard Allen. Richard Allen, a local Delphi resident known for his quiet life as a husband, father, and a member of the community, was arrested and charged with the murders of Abby and Libby. For many in Delphi, it was a surreal moment. How could someone who lived and worked among them with no apparent criminal record be be a suspect in one of the Indiana's most notorious cases. Allen's arrest raised a flood of questions. How did authorities link him to the crime after all this time? And what kind of evidence had been uncovered that could finally lead to justice? Since Allen's arrest, the case has only grown in complexity. Law enforcement has kept many details under wraps, and even now, as the trial progresses, we're just beginning to learn more about the evidence tying him to the case. Investigators have hinted at forensic links, circumstantial connections, and even possible witness accounts, all slowly building a narrative that the prosecution hopes will prove Allen's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. With this background in mind, let's move into the courtroom and look at the opening statements from both the prosecution and defense to see how each side is shaping their arguments in this high-stakes trial. Now, I'm going to dive into some opening statements. As the trial for Richard Allen got underway, the opening statements set the tone for what promises to be one of the most gripping and closely watched cases in recent years. Both the prosecution and defense came prepared, knowing that each word spoken could impact how the jury and the public view the case. Let's break down the core arguments from each side and the strategies they're relying on as the trial progresses. The prosecution opened with a strong, emotionally charged narrative aiming to portray Richard Allen as a man with a dark, hidden side. They begin by recounting the tragic loss of the two young lives that brought the Delphi community together in grief, describing the scene in vivid detail to remind the jury of the victims at the heart of this case. According to them, they possess both forensic evidence and witness testimony that directly links Allen to the crime scene on that fateful February day. Their message was clear. This evidence, they claim, is overwhelming and irrefutable, leaving no room for doubt. A key component of their case revolves around the haunting clues left by Libby German, the video footage, and audio clip captured on her phone shortly before their murders. The prosecution argued that the voice saying "down the hill" belonged to Richard Allen, a claim that they believe they can substantiate with expert voice analysis and testimonies from the familiar people that are familiar with Richard Allen's voice. They also suggested that additional forensic details, which have yet to be fully disclosed to the public, would further confirm Allen's involvement. Throughout their opening and prosecution aimed to create a compelling narrative, presenting Allen as a hidden predator who managed to blend into the community while harboring a dangerous and unseen side. In stark contrast, the defense's opening statement took a different approach, painting Allen as an innocent man caught up in a tragic series of events. They questioned the prosecution's reliance on circumstantial evidence, arguing that there's little, if any, concrete proof directly tying Allen to the murders. Allen, they pointed out, is a family man with a clean record and no apparent motive to commit such a horrific crime. That's what they're trying to say. According to the defense, law enforcement may have put in on Allen under pressure to solve this high-profile case. The defense also tackled the forensic evidence head-on. While the prosecution claims it will serve as undeniable proof of Allen's guilt, the defense contends that the methods used to gather and interpret this defense or evidence are flawed. They raised serious doubts about the reliability of the voice analyst, arguing that matching Allen's voice to the recorded clip could be problematic. How certain, they asked, can anyone be that the voice of the recording belongs to Richard Allen? Additionally, the defense argued that Allen has been cast as an easy target because of his proximity to Delphi in unfortunate coincidences rather than any solid evidence. They warned the jury of the dangers of a rush to judgment, cautioning them against convicting an innocent man based on circumstantial details rather than hard facts. As the trial unfolds, both sides' opening statements revealed that the intense legal battle ahead is going to be a hard one. The prosecution is determined to prove Allen's guilt with what they present as solid, science-backed evidence, while the defense aims to cast doubt on every aspect of the prosecution's case, urging the jury to look beyond public pressure and examine each piece of evidence with a critical eye. With the opening statements now complete, the stage is set for the courtroom drama of epic proportions. Let's move forward and take a closer look at some of the most powerful moments from the trial so far, the witness testimonies that had a profound impact on the courtroom. Key witnesses' testimonies. As the trial has progressed, some of the most impactful moments have come from the testimonies of the witnesses who have shared insights into the events surrounding the Delphi murders and, crucially, Richard Allen's alleged connection to them. Witness testimonies can make or break a case, especially in a trial like this one, where much of the evidence is circumstantial. Let's break down some of the most compelling and emotional and even controversial testimonies that have emerged so far. The first key witnesses was a local woman who testified about seeing a man match Richard Allen's description near the Munning High Bridge on the day of the murders. She described his clothing, demeanor, and the unusual way he appeared to be watching the trail. According to her, the man she saw seemed out of place and displayed a nervous energy, something she remembered clearly due to the chilling events that followed. Her testimony added a vivid picture for the jury, painting Allen as potentially involved from early on. However, the defense quickly jumped into the challenge of her recollections, highlighting inconsistencies and questioning whether her memory could still be accurate given the significant passage of time since the incident. Another gripping testimony came from the forensic audio expert who reviewed the recording captured on Libby German's phone. This expert presented the findings of a specialized analyst claiming or probability that the voice saying "down the hill" belongs to Richard Allen. This testimony became one of the cornerstones of the prosecution's case, suggesting Allen's undeniable presence at the crime scene. However, this type of forensic work is often met with skepticism, and the defense was quick to address this. They argued that the voice recognition, especially with such limited and low quality audio, is inherently unreliable, pointing out the limitations of technology and raising doubts about the true identity of the voice in the recording. The courtroom atmosphere grew tense when family members of the victims took the stand. They shared the emotional toll the crime has taken on their lives, giving the jury a first-hand look into the suffering that has followed the tragic loss of Abby and Libby. While their testimonies didn't add direct evidence against Allen, the family's accounts provided a powerful emotional backdrop that reminded everyone of the stakes involved. For the prosecution, this was a strategic move to humanize the victims and underscore the profound impact of the crime on the community. Jurors were visibly affected, and their presence left a lasting impression that underscored the significance of each piece of evidence. Adding another layer of complexity to the case, a digital forensic analysis testified about Allen's online behavior, highlighting his search history and activity on social media in the weeks and months following the murders. The prosecution argued that Allen had a pattern of searching for news about the Delphi case and consuming crime-related content that they suggested pointed to a dark, potentially incriminating curiosity. They presented this as more than just a casual browsing, implying that Allen was closely following the investigation. Defense countered this by suggesting that browsing crime content is not uncommon in today's culture, where true crime has become a mainstream genre, and argued that no one should be criminalized for their search history alone. One of the most controversial testimonies came from former acquaintance of Allen's who claimed that Allen had made some disturbing comments about the Delphi murders during a casual conversation, and according to this witness, Allen had said something along the lines of, "You'd have to be really smart to pull something off like that without getting caught." The prosecution seized on this comment, suggesting it was a subtle admission or, at the very least, a hint that Allen viewed himself as capable of such a crime, and the defense, however, was quick to question the credibility of this witness, pointing out the potential bias and personal grievances against Allen, arguing that the witness might have embellished his story to fit the prosecution's narrative. An FBI profiler was called in to shed light on the type of individual who might commit such a crime. While the profiler didn't directly tie Allen to the profile, the prosecution used this testimony to suggest that Allen's lifestyle, background, and personality could align with certain characteristics typically found in individuals who commit similar crimes. It was a subtle approach, one designed to let the jury connect the dots without the prosecution making a direct claim. The defense, however, countered this with their own expert, reminding the court that profiling is not perfect, that it should be used cautiously in legal settings, especially with no concrete link exist between the profile and Allen himself. The prosecution has effectively heard these statements together to build a psychological and circumstantial case against Richard Allen, suggesting that his behavior, remarks, and lifestyle paint a picture that fits with someone capable of this crime. Meanwhile, the defense has worked tirelessly to dismantle these claims, challenging witness reliability, raising questions about the accuracy of forensic evidence, and attempting to cast each piece of testimony as speculative at best. As we continue through the trial, the jury will have to weigh these powerful statements, deciding which ones truly carry weight and which might be clouded by time, personal bias, or insufficient scientific grounding. Next, we'll look into the prosecution's presentation of the physical evidence, the forensic and digital evidence they claim directly links Richard Allen to the murders of Libby and Abby. We'll also explore how the defense is responding to these claims, scrutinizing every piece of evidence in their fight to introduce reasonable doubt. Now, crucial evidence presented. Let's go over this. As we move deeper into the trial, the physical and forensic evidence presented by the prosecution is emerging as one of the most anticipated aspects of the case. Now, the prosecution has been working to build a compelling story that ties Richard Allen directly to the murders, relying heavily on scientific methods and digital forensics to establish that connection. Let's break down the critical pieces of evidence that have been presented so far and examine the defense's counterpoints to each one. One of the prosecution's central pieces of physical evidence involves fibers allegedly found on the victims, which they claim matches materials from Richard Allen's clothing or personal belongings. Forensic experts testified that these fibers are highly specific with qualities that match fabric found in Allen's home. This is a critical component in the prosecution's case because it suggests close contact between Allen and the victims on the day of the murders. The prosecution argued that the presence of these fibers strongly supports Allen's physical proximity to the girls, with the forensic scientists suggesting that direct contact was more than likely than secondary transfer in this case. However, the defense countered by emphasizing that fibers are easily transferable and could have come from various sources, urging the jury to consider alternative explanations. Next, the prosecution introduced digital evidence gathered from Allen's devices, including his phone and computers. They revealed a pattern of Allen's engagement with the Delphi case-related content, showing that he had viewed articles, videos, and forum posts focused on the murders, many of which provided detailed theories and analysis of the crime. According to the prosecution, this frequent obsessive interest could indicate Allen's connection to the case, and they highlighted that even watched videos of police press conferences regarding the case, suggesting a desire to stay updated on the investigation. And the defense, however, argued that following high-profile cases online is a very common thing in today's world, particularly with the rise of true crime media, and maintained that viewing crime-related content should not be taken as an indication of guilt. Perhaps one of the most technical aspects of the prosecution's case is their presentation of partial DNA and fingerprint samples recovered from the crime scene. The prosecution claimed these samples, though not ideal due to environmental and contamination, contained genetic markers consistent with Allen's DNA profile. However, the prosecution acknowledged that these samples were incomplete and not a conclusive match. The defense seized on this, arguing that incomplete DNA evidence is scientifically unreliable and cautioning the jury against making assumptions based on partial evidence. They suggested that these markers could just easily match other individuals and urged skepticism when interpreting this part of the evidence. A pivotal moment in the trial so far came when the prosecution introduced digital location data collected from the cell towers and geolocation services on Allen's devices. According to investigators, the data places Allen in the vicinity of the Monon High Bridge on the day of the murders, aligning with the approximate time of the crime. The prosecution presented this data as a significant piece of circumstantial evidence, arguing that Allen's proximity to the location is another link in the chain. In response, the defense highlighted the inherent limitations of cell tower data, pointing out that it can only provide an approximate radius rather than a precise location. They argued that being near the bridge does not necessarily place Allen at the crime scene, and that innocent people could have passed through that day. There's no telling who it is. In a surprising twist, the prosecution brought in a behavioral analyst expert who testified that Allen's actions and behavior following the murders aligned with known psychological profiles of individuals involved in such crimes. They pointed to Allen's changes in lifestyle and apparent anxiety about the investigation, presenting these as a possible indicator of guilt. According to the expert, his actions fit a pattern often observed in individuals who attempt to conceal guilt by blending in or displaying nervous behavior. However, the defense downplayed this testimony, questioning the validity of the behavioral profiling in court cases. They argued that Allen's behavior could be explained by the pressure and scrutiny he experienced after his arrest, and warned the jury to be cautious in making conclusions based on psychology, which they argued is far from exact science. One piece of evidence that has captured significant public attention is a weapon discovered during the investigation. The prosecution, the weapon, although not confirmed as the murder weapon, is of the same type believed to have been used in the Delphi murders. They argued that this discovery should be taken as an indirect but telling connection, supporting their narrative that Allen has access to means to commit the crime. However, the defense has criticized this line of reasoning, arguing that the possession of similar weapon does not equate to guilt, and warning the jury to not draw on such conclusions from such indirect evidence without a confirmed forensic link to the murders. The prosecution also presented expert testimony related to digital forensics, specifically Allen's online activities and data patterns observed on his devices in the weeks leading up to his arrest. They argued that Allen had frequently visited online forums, media outlets, and social media pages focused on the Delphi murders, suggesting a potential obsession with the case that could indicate a deeper involvement. They revealed that his search history showed a preoccupation with the investigators' progress and a fixation on any developments announced by police. The defense, however, argued that browsing crime content is a calming pastime for many and does not indicate guilt. They emphasized that such viewing habits are easily explainable in a culture where true crime is increasingly popular and accessible. Throughout the presentation, the prosecution has used each piece of evidence to build what they believe to be a irrefutable case. Their argument is that when taken together, the fibers, digital records, and location data, behavioral observations, and the weapon all point towards Allen's involvement. However, the defense has worked just as meticulously to dismantle this picture, highlighting the limitations of forensic technology and the subjectivity of behavioral profiling and the inconclusiveness of partial DNA evidence. By questioning each piece of evidence and pointing out the potential for alternative interpretations, the defense hopes to introduce enough reasonable doubt to sway the jury. As we reach the final stages of Richard Allen's trial, or go through a decent amount of it, the current status of the case indicates that both the prosecution and the defense have nearly presented all of their main evidence and witness testimonies. The courtroom has witnessed back and forth battle, which each side making compelling arguments that will challenge the jury as they weigh complex forensic analysts, emotional witness accounts, and circumstantial evidence to determine Allen's fate. The prosecution's case has relied on cumulative evidence, piecing together Allen's digital footprint, physical evidence, and behavioral patterns to argue for a pattern of guilt. They maintain that while each piece of evidence may not be conclusive on its own, her cumulative effect forms a persuasive picture of Allen's involvement in the crime. And for the prosecution, it's about creating a cohesive narrative. Every detail from Allen's location data to his unusual interest in the case aligns with behaviorals of someone connected to the crime. This final week of testimony has included a recap from the prosecution, who has reminded the jury for each link they've established, emphasizing that these links form a compelling chain of evidence. The defense, however, has focused on dismantling each element of the prosecution's case, striving to plant seeds of doubt across every component of evidence. They argue that much of the evidence is circumstantial and leaves significant gaps that could result in a wrongful conviction. By highlighting these limitations of partial DNA samples, challenging the reliability of location data, and questioning the motivations behind certain witnesses' testimonies, the defense aims to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. As they prepare for their closing arguments, they're likely to remind the jury that the burden of proof lies solely with the prosecution, and that the standard required to convict must be met beyond a reasonable doubt. We've covered a lot in this deep dive into Richard Allen Delphi trial, from the haunting testimonies and intense legal maneuvers to physical evidence that has both captivated and divided the public. This case is one of those rare moments where law, community, and media coverage highlighting just how impactful a single trial can be on our sense of justice. As the jury prepares to deliberate, it's clear that the decision they make will not only impact Richard Allen's fate, but will also leave a profound mark on the families of Abby and Libby, the Delphi community, and everyone who has followed this heartbreaking case like myself. It's a reminder of the crucial role that due process and evidence play in determining the truth, and even amid strong emotions and public pressure. Those of you who have been following this trial, thank you for your commitment to understanding every angle of this complex story. Your engagement and thoughtful commentary matter as we aim to stay informed and respectful of the weight this case carries. If you want to stay updated on this trial and see what unfolds next, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be the first to know when we share new developments. And if you found this video insightful, please give it a like, share it, hit that notification bell. It is your boy T-REV. Love and light to every single one of you. I'll see you on the next one.